Dobrý den, dámy a pánové, já vás ráda přivítala na dnešním semináři, který se týká deeskalačních technik a náročného chování ve školách. Mé jméno je Karin Nielsen Bakken, jsem z České odborné společnosti pro inkluzivní vzdělávání, která dnešní seminář pořádá. My se dlouhodobě zabýváme podporou vlastně rozvoje pedagogické spravedlivosti českého vzdělávacího systému a jeho kvality. A v poslední době se hodně zaměřujeme právě na agendu podpory dětského duševního zdraví a také vzdělávání učitelů v oblasti práce s dětmi, které mají nějakým způsobem vlastně náročné projevy chování. Často je to o tom, že třeba nedůstají v dobrých bezpečných podmínkách a potřebují nějakou speciální podporu. A spolu se mnou jsou tady kolegyně, kolegové z norské organizace Untitled, kteří s námi dlouhodobě spolupracují právě na této agendě. My jsme moc rádi, že je máme a že nám jsou velkou inspirací a podporou. A vlastně zástupkyní tohoto týmu Karin je dnešním expertkou, která právě toto téma deeskalace a podporu s problémy v oblasti chování představí. Měli bychom končit v 16 hodin, dáme si nějakou velmi kratičkou pauzu uprostřed toho bloku a zeptám se, jestli všichni, kdo potřebujete sluchátka, jste si je půjčili. Je to tak, že zapínáte otočením toho kolečka, je to zároveň vlastně místo, kde si můžete přidávat zvuk. A ti, kteří dobře slyšíte, rozumíte anglicky, nepotřebujete sluchátka, byste měli být zejména vepředu, protože aby vás prostě, abyste Karin dobře slyšeli a je to prostě fajn, když jste víc na blízku přednášející. Takže přeju vám, abyste si dnešní setkání, seminář užili, budu moc rádi, když se třeba i zeptáte potom v závěru na to, co vás zajímá a co se třeba týká vaší praxe, problémů, kterým čelíte. A já už předávám slovo Karin a moc jí děkuju za to, že přijela i spolu se svými kolegy a že nám to dnešní téma představí. Prosím.
Thank you. It's so great to be here. My name is Karin Bakken. I'm a clinical psychologist and the assistant clinical director at a treatment facility in Norway called Østbytunet. And I must start this presentation by saying that I'm really sorry. I have a cough, so I am unfortunately needing some breaks in between because I'm going to cough. And when I do, please remove your headsets from your ears because that's going to hurt your ears. I have been tested and I'm fully vaccinated. This is not COVID, but I still have a cough. So today we are going to talk about de-escalating challenging behavior in the schools. We'll try to keep it practical, to keep it as useful as possible for you. If you have any questions, reflections, anything you want to share, we're going to do a Q&A in the middle, and we'll try to have some minutes for a Q&A in the end as well. And I plan that we take a little break in the middle because sitting completely still for 2 hours just listening, that's a very hard exercise. So we'll take a little break at approximately, I think, 3 o'clock or something like that. Oops. It would be great if things were working. See if I can get this. No. I know I can do it like this. Or I couldn't do it like this. I do this. Aha! So, you might recognize this. This is going to be quite familiar for some of you. This could be like a day at work. Kids running around, not sitting still. There's not much of a learning academic activity going on in this classroom. So what we want is for kids at school to be more like this. But how can we go from this chaotic classroom to this more calm, learning-based classroom. Today's presentation is about de-escalating challenging behavior. But I think that we need to start the day with agreeing upon what is the definition of challenging behavior. Because if I stand here to talk about one thing, and that doesn't resonate with what you think or experience as challenging behavior, it's not going to be that good. So when we talk about challenging behavior, very often we talk about this. We talk about the kids who are disruptive, who are fidgety, who are restless, who is moving around, who is being verbally aggressive or rude to either the teacher and or the peers in the classroom. And it's quite hard to do learning activity with a class if you have one or more students walking around or being restless or being rude, being aggressive, maybe even destroying things. But this is not the only challenging behavior that you will see in a classroom. Because another type of challenging behavior is actually the withdrawn kids. The kids who go to a quiet place inside themselves. We have the empty, blank faces. They don't pay attention to your teaching. They don't start doing the work they're supposed to do. They just sit there. They might even say yes and no, but they don't do what you expect them to do. This is also challenging behavior. Because challenging behavior in the classroom, I would define as behavior that comes in the way of learning. Something that disrupts the learning situation for either that kid alone or for the class as a whole group. So, what do we need to know about challenging behavior? Whether it's withdrawing to a place inside our own mind, daydreaming, or if it's being restless and disruptive, the challenging behavior doesn't erupt out of nowhere. There's always a reason, there's always a cause for this challenging behavior. And if you want to find a solution, you need to figure out what is the reason for this behavior. It's like thinking about fire. If you're going to put out a fire, you need to know what caused the fire. Because if you have fire in, for instance, wood, you would pour water on it. But if you have fire in the kitchen in a kettle with oil in it, you most certainly don't want to put water on it, because then you're going to have a big explosion in the kitchen. So to solve and therefore de-escalate and get the challenging behavior out of the classroom, we need to figure out why it erupts in the first place. I brought with me 2 kids today to help me with this lecture. And I Googled, and Google told me that Yaakov and Liska is like the top 10 most popular names in the Czech Republic. These are kids that's sort of a summary of a lot of kids I've met, so they're not real kids, but they're real enough. I met enough kids in my life who are like them. So we have Yaakov. He is 12 years of age. He experienced violence at home from an early age, and the violence is still going on. He shows disruptive behavior in class. He's going to be restless. He's going to be fidgety. He is not going to start his work when you want him to. Sometimes he's going to be cooperative. Sometimes he's going to be nice. At other times, he's going to be rude. He's going to be verbally and maybe even physically aggressive. And Yaakov, he doesn't have that many friends in the class. Most of the other kids, they are scared of him. because he seems to be quite unpredictable. You don't know what he's going to do. He could sit there and look quiet, and all of a sudden he's going to switch his desk over, for instance. Liska, on the other hand, she is 11 years old, going on 17. She has grown up in a family with economic hardship. Her mother is depressed, and she sometimes has to take care of her younger siblings. In the classroom, Liska is quiet. She's often not paying attention. She looks like she's just daydreaming. And she doesn't often comply with the instructions from the teacher. And she seems to not care. So if the teacher corrects her and says that, Liska, you need to do this or that, she's going to be like, talk to the hand because I don't care. Or she's just going to stare at the teacher and not give any response at all. She has some superficial friendships in the class. She has some girls that she's with in the recess, but she's not popular. The other kids in the class find her a little bit weird. So, why is it challenging to be the teacher of Yaakov and Liska? What do they present in the class? First of all, none of them can control their behavior. They are not good at interacting with their peers, and they're both rude to the teachers. Yaakov a little bit more than Liska, but she can also be like, I don't care, whatever. That's going to be her kind of like attitude that she brings into the classroom. And they're bad at concentration, but it's really frustrating because sometimes they're actually able to do it. Sometimes they're going to walk into the classroom and they're going to be quiet, they're going to be nice, they're going to follow the rules, they're going to do the things that the teachers want them to do. And at other times, they are just going to be not so very nice to have in the classroom. Liska is going to zone out, she's not going to care what's going on around her, she's going to daydream, she just sits there and draw a little bit in her book, for instance. Yaakov, he's going to be verbally aggressive. I don't want to do this is so stupid. But you know that sometimes they can actually do this. So why can't they just, pull it together? If they have what it takes to be good, if they have what it takes to comply with the rules, why can't they do it all the time? And it's so easy to think that there must be something really wrong with their attitude, and if they just pull themselves together, they can do whatever. So they are not doing what they are supposed to do because they are rude, and they're just doing it to sort of be bad. But if we're going to look at it through a different kind of lens, it's going to be challenging to be the teacher of these two kids because they both have what we call a sensitized stress response system. They react badly to stress. And they're victims of their state-dependent functioning. They're also really bad at regulating their own activation, their stress, and their behavior. And we're going to go into each of these domains and see what's actually happened to Yaakov and Liska and why they present the kind of behavior and functioning that they do in the classroom. So, if you look at stress, this is a concept taken from a great American psychiatrist called Dr. Bruce Perry. And he states that there's sort of two roads when it comes to stress. And it's important to notice that stress is not like, oh, I have so much to do at work, so I feel stressed out. Stress in this definition is whenever there's a demand or a strain on any bodily function or any mental or emotional function. So stress is being hungry. Stress is being thirsty. Stress is being too warm, too cold. Stress is not knowing what's going to happen. Stress is feeling overwhelmed. And stress is so important for our development. If we don't have stress, we don't develop. So we need stress. But the kind of stress we need is something that's predictable, moderate, something we can control, and that happens in a safe relationship with someone who supports us. So stress happens whenever we experience a novelty, whenever our body or mind experience something it hasn't seen or met before, or when we don't have all the tools we need to sort of meet that need that's rising. So if you think about a newborn baby, tiny little infant, very cute, that infant is going to experience, for instance, hunger as stress. And hunger comes at predictable rates, because hunger erupts when your stomach is empty, and your stomach sends signals to your brain that I'm empty, I need a refill. If that kid, that newborn infant, doesn't experience hunger and give a signal to its caregiver that it's actually hungry, he's not going to get food. And if he doesn't get food, he's not going to survive. So it's important that he feels that he's hungry. So when a newborn is hungry, he's going to be like, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy. I'm hungry, I need food. And he's going to start screaming. Now, when I'm hungry, I'm like, I'm a little bit hungry, I'm a little bit more hungry. Now I really need food. So now I walk over to the refrigerator, I'm going to make some food. I don't start screaming. So we get better at controlling these kind of elements the more mature we get. But we need, whenever we experience stress, we need to be able to have it in sort of moderate doses, and we need to be able to relax in between everything that happens to us. So, for instance, the infant, very, very hungry, cries out. And what happens? Well, the mother comes over and says, oh, you're hungry, my little baby. I'm going to feed you. And she feeds her baby, and he feels like, oh, this is so nice. My tummy feels better. I'm no longer hungry. Being close to mom feels so good. And then he relaxes. And then he's going to be happy and content until like 3 hours have passed, and his stomach once again sends the signal, I'm hungry, I'm empty, I need a refill. And then again, the caring mother is coming, she's feeding, and his stress system is going like, oh, this is nice, I can relax. But it's not always like this. Because sometimes there is no attuned caregiver. There is no caregiver coming instantly when the kid feels hungry. Maybe he's lying in his little crib for a little while, crying, 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 before the mother comes. And if that happens over and over and over again, that kid might get what we call a vulnerable or a sensitized stress response system. So he doesn't learn to feel calm and that his needs are met before he experiences something new that alerts him. And the reason why this is important when it comes to teaching, when it comes to having kids in your classroom, is because you're going to have kids in your classroom who might have experienced caregivers who were not attuned, or who has lived under living conditions where they have been strains on their sensory system and it hasn't been met, or they haven't been able to sort of relax before something new happens. And these kids, they are going to go from 0 to 60 in like 0.3 seconds, because they will experience any stress upon the system as something dangerous, something bad. It's not very big. I hope you can read a little bit what it says. The blue, that's our friend Yaakov, and the, not the yellow, the pink, that's our friend Liska, whilst the green is like normal kid. So for our friend Yaakov, he has experienced that his caregivers are sometimes attuned, sometimes nice, sometimes comforting him, and at other times they are his source of fear. They are the ones who are being violent at home. Maybe mom and dad are violent at each other, and maybe they're violent at Yaakov. So he will feel that they have like a conditioned love for him. There are some conditions relating to their love for him, and he doesn't know when they're going to love him and when they're going to be angry and violent and scary for him. So he has a stress response system that's going to say, I need to stay vigilant. I need to pay attention to everything that's going on around me. I need to figure out what every sound means. Does this mean that dad is angry and he's going to hurt me? Or is this a sound that signals that there's calm and niceness in my house? And his brain is going to be really concerned with protection. So he's going to think about protection all the time. And when I say he's going to think about it, I don't mean that he's actually in his head having thoughts like, I need to stay vigilant, I need to think about protection. It's more happening without his sort of thinking part of the brain, but his lower parts of the brain are constantly surveying his surroundings. For Liska, she grows up with a depressed mother who's really concerned about the economic hardship of the family. So sometimes when Liska comes home from school, mom is going to be fine. Other times, mom is going to be on the couch, crying, maybe in the same clothes that she wore the day before, because she has been on the couch all night long. Maybe they have food in the house for dinner, maybe they don't. And what should Liska do if there's no food in the house? She feels that there's nobody to help me. There are no adults in my house that can help me with this, so I need to take care of it on my own. I have to rely on my own and nobody else, because there's nobody else able to help me here. And my best way to cope with my life is just to shut everything out. I numb myself from whatever is happening around me. Whereas a normal kid will experience things like, oh, we have a math test on Tuesday and I'm really scared about it because I don't know it that well, but you know, I can always ask my teacher for help, and I know that my parents believe in me and they will help me if I need help with this. And that's going to get that kid into develop protection and resilience. And these kids are getting better and better at handling stress, whereas Yaakov and Liska, sadly, are getting worse and worse at handling stress. So one way of understanding why you have challenging behavior in the classroom is because Yaakov and Liska have brains who are so concerned with protection, who are so concerned with dealing with everything on their own, so there's less capacity for them to sit still, pay attention, and do what they're supposed to do. Another thing that makes having Yaakov and Liska in the classroom challenging is that they are victims for their own state-dependent functioning. And state-dependent functioning is, simply said, it's just that what skills we have are based on the state that we're in. And this is not something that's specific for kids who grow up with violence, for instance. State-dependent functioning is a way to describe all of us. We all experience state-dependent functioning. The more stressed we are, the more activated we feel, the stupider we get. In Norway, we have one day a year, it's the 22nd of December, which is the day where there are most accidents, small accidents, reported to the insurance companies for cars. So cars on the 22nd of December are more likely to being in the parking lot and hitting another car or doing small accidents with the car, not the big ones. And that is not because 22nd of December is the day when all the people who have experienced violence and challenging childhoods are out driving. This is because it's 2 days before Christmas, and everybody is out in oh, I need to get another present for my mother-in-law, and I need to pick up some food for Christmas Eve, and I need to do this and that. And people are so stressed out, so that when they're out driving and they're going into parking lot, they don't notice another car pulling out, for instance, and they hit that car. So the more stressed we are, the less good we are at getting an accurate picture of what's happening around us, and we do more stupid things. And this is not only because we have sort of negative emotions, but if you are madly in love with someone, you will find yourself sitting all day long daydreaming about that person, not doing the work you're supposed to do, for instance, simply because you have an activation concerning love. But sometimes it's stress and negative emotions that makes us do stupid things, like in the heat of an argument. You'll say something to a friend or your spouse that you know you shouldn't say. It's not a very wise thing to say, but you say it anyway because of the heat of the moment. So this is taken from Dr. Perry, and this is simply dividing the different states into 5 different states. So we have calm, alert, alarm, fear, and terror. And calm is like the coolest state you can be in, and terror is the most fearful state. The more activated you are, your IQ is actually dropping point by point, and you have much more activity in the lower parts of the brain than your top part. And your top part of your brain is, of course, your thinking part. And if you don't have access to your thinking part, you're going to do more stupid things. So, to look into calm. Calm is our best state. That's when you're really going to feel like we know it all. That's when you can reflect and think about everything. So if you want to do long-term planning, for instance, like, oh, I think that in the summer of 2030, then COVID's going to be all over, and then I want to go scuba diving in the Caribbean Sea, so I need to save money. How should I do that? That kind of long-term planning you will do in a state of calm. Your focus could be like inside yourselves. You're not too concerned about what's happening around you. You have no activation of your stress response system, and in the classroom you will see no challenging behavior. When kids are at school, they're not going to be that much in a state of calm, because whenever there's another person coming, we tend to shift states. So for our 2 small friends, Yaakov, he's going to be in a state of calm when he is home, alone, no adults in the house, just him and his computer and his gaming. But he's not gaming online with any of the other kids in his class, he's just gaming for himself. That's when he's going to feel like he's in a state of calm. Liska is also going to feel a state of calm when she's home. There's a good vibe in the house. Maybe her mother's a little bit cheerful, singing in the kitchen while she's preparing food. And Liska is on her bed, on her phone, looking at Snapchat or TikTok or YouTube or something like that. Yaakov and Liska is not going to be in your classroom in this state. When you have kids in the classroom, you want them to be in a state of alert. Because when we are in the state of alert, we are a little bit tuned outwards. We are alert to our surrounding, what's happening in the classroom, what are the teachers saying. And if you don't pay attention to what the teacher is saying and what's going on in your surroundings, you're not going to learn anything at school. So we want these school kids to be here. Functional IQ goes down like a little bit, but you still have quite good access to your thinking part of the brain. You don't see much kind of challenging behavior in this state. Might be a little bit of resistance, like, oh, it's such a sunny outside, can't we go outside and have like a longer recess? That kind of behavior. For Yaakov, in this stage, he's going to pay attention to the teacher. He's going to ask for help if he needs it. But he's going to wear a cap in the classroom, a baseball cap. Liska, she's going to pay attention to the teacher. She's going to smile and be nice to the kids sitting next to her. She's going to be a little bit slow to start the assignments, but she's going to get there eventually. With a little support, a little bit help from her teacher, she's going to start it, but she's going to be a little bit slow. And then we have the stage of alarm. Here we have an activation of our stress response systems. We're going to feel a little bit uncertain. What does this mean? What's happening? How can I handle this situation? Do I know something that looks a little bit like this? For instance, if you are a math teacher and you have taught the kids in your class how to add numbers together and how to take numbers out, like 10 minus 5, you taught them that, and then you're going to do something new. Then the kids are going to be like, do I know this? Does this look like anything we have covered in math before? Can I use anything I have learned before, for instance? Going to feel a little bit stressed, a little bit overwhelmed, but most kids will then calm down because the teacher says, we'll do it slowly, I'm going to help you, I'm going to teach you, it's going to be fine. You might see some opposition, some defiance, I don't want to do this. And you might even see something that we call fake compliance. And fake compliance is saying yes. Yes, I'll do this, and then not do it. And you only say yes to get out of the situation that you're in that you feel uncomfortable. So for instance, if you have another kid in the class, Peter, who is a little bit disruptive, and you take him to the side and say, you know, Peter, you can't do like this, you have to behave. And he's going to be, I'll be good. I'll be good, I'm not going to do anything wrong. And then you go back into the classroom and he'll continue to do what he just did. He'll be like, well, we just had an agreement. You said you were not going to do it anymore, but why do you keep doing it? The truth is, Peter didn't make an agreement with you that he was not going to do it again. He just said yes and no whenever he thought that was the right response to get out of having that conversation with you because it was so uncomfortable for him. When Yaakov is in this state, he is being restless. He is fidgeting. He's touching everything around him. He's going to refuse to do the math assignment because it's rubbish. It's just so stupid, and he doesn't want to do it. Whereas Liska, she's starting to daydream. It's hard to get her attention. She's going to just stare at the other kids, staring at them, but still not quite looking at them. She's going to say yes to everything. Liska, can you start your assignment? Yes, I'll do it. But she won't. Yeah. I just have like a helping hand on the side. Just to clarify, what I'm talking about now is not conscious behavior. It's not something the kids are thinking about and like choosing to do. So when Liska is saying, yes, I'll do this, start the assignment, or Peter makes an agreement, yeah, I'll behave, I'll not do whatever I did in the classroom. They're not saying these things, choosing to do it, say whatever they think they want you, what they think you want to hear, and then deliberately going back and doing whatever they were doing just to be bad. This happens because they feel so much stress in, for instance, having this conversation with you. So they are just trying to survive. And the best way to survive is just appeasing the others around you. So you'll say to the teacher, yeah, I'll do it. And when they come back, they still feel stressed out, and whatever caused them to be disruptive is going to cause them to be disruptive again. It's just going to repeat this because their stress response system is really firing. But in a state of fear, we are really activated. We feel unsafe. It's kind of like us or them. Either you're with me or you're against me. We are not very smart people in a state of fear. We don't have access to this really smart part of our brain. So we'll just do whatever we feel we have to do to survive. And it's not like conscious thinking, it's just happening. In this state, you will see challenging behavior. It's either being non-cooperative, I don't want to be here, I don't want to do this, I'm not going to listen to you. Or it's going to be numbness, zoning out, daydreaming, not paying attention. You can observe aggression, you can observe physical aggression, or verbally, I hate you, you're a stupid cow, or they'll destroy their books, or flipping over their chairs, or something like that. For instance, for Yaakov, he could be both verbally and or physically threatening to others, both his peers in the classroom and his teachers. He'll refuse to listen. He'll not comply with the rules because the rules are stupid. And he'll do whatever he wants to do. He's going to present like really aggressive attitude. Whereas Liska, you don't get contact. She's daydreaming, she's not listening, she's just sitting there. The lights are on, there's nobody home. It's so hard to make contact with her. And Yaakov, he is not being aggressive because he wants to be bad. Liska is not zoning out because she doesn't care about your teaching. They're both trying to deal with this really uncomfortable, scary feeling that's inside their body. A newborn baby who's hungry is not going to scream because he wants to punish his mother when she's finally been able to sit down with a cup of coffee. He's screaming because he's hungry. And there's something going on inside Yaakov and Liska that's making them be like this. And then we have the fifth state, the state of terror. It's the ultimate state of fear. This is a fight to our death. It's every man for himself. Nobody can help me. I just have to do whatever I have to do to survive this situation. It might be to run away. It could be to kick somebody down to the ground. It could be to disconnect my mind from my body so that I can survive being raped or whatever's happening to my body. I go somewhere deep inside my brain, not feeling what's going on. Yaakov, he's going to destroy property. He is going to flip over his desk, he's going to hit the other kids, he's going to be spitting, physically assaulting the others, both the kids and the teacher in the class. Whoever's in his way is going to get some. Whereas Liska, she might even fall asleep in the middle of the class. She's going to be pale, she's going to have slow movements, or maybe her body's completely still, not moving at all. So, I'm sorry. If you, like Yaakov, grow up in a household where your parents is both the source of love and the really scary source, because they can be violent, you might get a sensitized stress response system. And that means that it doesn't have to be that much stress to activate you. So Yaakov, he's going to react to stuff that other kids will handle. If you grow up in economic hardship, or your parents are really concerned with, don't have that much money, how we're going to organize so that we have dinner every day, how am I going to find work because I'm unemployed, or they have mental disorder, or you're in a really bad kindergarten where the adults are not that attuned to the kids' developmental stage and taking care of their emotions. There are many ways in which you could get a sensitized stress response system. It's not all about the violence in the home. That's one way. But it can be a lot of other ways as well. But the result is still that when you have a sensitized stress response system, it takes less to arouse you. You move up the arousal continuum from calm to terror at a much faster rate than the rest of us. And you're going to need more time and effort to calm down. And this even makes it, these kids are often more, they're worse at regulating themselves, changing their arousal level than what other kids will be like. So you can't expect them to sort of calm down in the same, using the same tools than you would expect from the other kids in the classroom. So Yaakov and Liska, they're going to be like a Ferrari. They're going from 0 to 60 in 0.3 seconds. They're going from seemingly looking cool, calm, and collected, cooperative in the classroom to full-blown, you're a stupid cow and I want to do your stupid math assignments. While the rest of us are like an old Skoda in town square, like, what happened now? And they are at a really big speed. And just to say, I don't make fun of Skoda. I have a Skoda myself. But this is how these kids are like. And you're going to stand like, what happened? I think we have time for like a few minutes of Q&A if there's any questions or anything you want to clarify now before we take a short break. Is there anyone who's had any questions or?
Yeah, I suppose I'm kind of wondering, how do we differentiate kids who grew up in like this environment, and maybe these are both the case, versus like other troubled kids who like notably might have ADHD or just be depressed or something like that? Because a lot of the things that you are describing kind of seem like they could come from something else too.
Yeah.
So how can we distinguish and like adjust appropriately there?
That's a really big question. Because
Sorry.
No, it's fine. The problem with kids is that the younger they are, the more everything is going to look the same. So for instance, with a 5-year-old, it's quite hard to distinguish which kid is being restless, disruptive, having trouble being with the peers in the kindergarten, for instance, because they have an ADHD, or they grow up in a family with violence, for instance. And it's quite hard, the older kids are, the more kind of variety of symptoms they're going to present, but still it might look quite alike. Whether or not, I think that as a teacher, your main goal is to teach the kids something in school, and it's a good thing if you're able to help them if they have like trouble at home or something like that. But you're not the main persons to figure out, are you depressed or do you suffer from ADHD, or do you grow up with violence? That's for other people. But still, if we say that Liska, she has had perfectly normal upbringing, but she's depressed. She's still going to, most of the time, she's probably going to daydream in the classroom. She's going to have slow movements. She's going to have a hard time starting to do any assignments. So she's going to need the same help from you as a teacher, whether she's depressed or because there's economic hardship, she has to take care of the siblings, etc. And after the break, we're going to go a little bit more into the sort of specifics on how we can actually help Yaakov and Liska in the classroom. Do you want to add something to that, or just throwing?
I think it's a really important and big question here, I think. And I think in clinical psychology,
I cannot translate it if I don't have
if you just remind them that also klinikere strever med det här.
Yeah, what she's saying is that this is a really big, very important questions. And even as psychologists, psychiatrists, etc., we also struggle to figure out what's going on inside Yaakov. Does he have ADHD? Does he suffer from developmental trauma? What's going inside Liska? We also struggle with these things. Yeah, and also one thing doesn't exclude the other, so you could actually have ADHD and developmental trauma, for instance. Is there any other question or comments? No? Shall we take 10-minute break, or do you need 15 minutes? Okay, so before we had the break, we talked about the stress response system and how it can get sort of sensitized. And we talked about the different states and how we behave the more activated we are. And when it comes to challenging behavior, one advice that one is often given is ignore bad behavior and reward good behavior. Which means ignore the kid when he's doing something you don't want him to do, and when he's doing what he's supposed to do, sort of boost him for it. That's actually quite bad advice. Because whenever Yaakov, Liska, or another person is showing challenging behavior, they are telling us with their whole body that I need help. If you have a newborn baby who's hungry and you find it, it's kind of an irritating noise, that baby screaming. So I'm just going to ignore it until that baby can ask for food in a nicer, more polite way. It's not going to work. It's not going to help the kid. So a good advice is actually to ignore the behavior, but don't ignore the child. Help. Offer some help to Yaakov and Liska and the rest of the kids when they're showing bad behavior, because they are truly showing you, I need your help. I can't deal with this on my own. So, sorry, how are we going to help them? We need to give them a helping hand. If they had been able to deal with these kind of situations and all the stress in their lives on their own, they would not have presented the challenging behavior that you see in the classroom. So we need to sort of hold their umbrella when it's raining, because they are carrying so much luggage on their own. And one way to help Yaakov and Liska is to help them develop or be better at regulation. And regulation is simply to make the state you're in fit with the situation you're in, that your arousal level matches your situation. For instance, when you are all sitting here, it's a good thing for me that you have a very low level of arousal, that you are calm. But I can assure you, going to a party with you, when you're sitting like this, it would be the world's most boring party. Because at the party, we want to be a little bit more aroused. We want to be more happy. We want to be a little bit more lively than you are at the moment. So regulating is simply to find a way to get into a state that matches the intensity of your situation. And we are never ever born with the capacity to self-regulate. It's something we learn through our attuned caregivers regulating us as infants and young children. It's the mother who comes when the infant signals that I'm hungry. It's the father who picks up the baby who's overwhelmed with being too tired and carries him on his shoulder until the baby falls asleep. That's how we become better at regulating. The depressed mother of Liska, who has so many worries for their economy, who wonders if they're even going to be able to keep the house they're living in, or if they have to move. She's going to be quite slow to pick up what signals Liska sends that I need help, I need someone to feed me or comfort me or something like that. So Liska, she hasn't developed a good enough system for regulating herself. In the classroom and everywhere else in the world, we have 3 different sort of levels of regulation. We could use top-down regulation, which is using the power of our mind, the power of our thoughts, to calm ourselves down. That's when you walk into this room and you think that, oh, okay, this is going to be a lecture, I need to sit quietly, that's going to be fine, it's going to be okay. That's the use of top-down regulation. That's when you have like an appointment at a doctor's office and you're going to take like a blood test and you're like, I don't really like taking blood tests, but it's going to be fine, I can just sit there and breathe and everything's going to be okay. That's the use of your mind to control the activation in your body. We can use relational regulation, which is the use of relationships and the people around us to change our state. That's when you are upset about something and you call your friend like, do you know what happened at work today? Or I've been arguing with my husband again, or something like that. That's the use of relational regulation. And then we have the 3rd level of regulation, which we call sensory motor regulation, and that's how we use our body and our senses to calm ourselves down or to calm our brains down. So that's when you've had like a really tough day at work and you feel so exhausted and you're so sick and tired of everything that you have to do. So you come home from work and all you want to do is just lie on your couch, eat like the biggest bowl of chocolate you can imagine, and just binge watch some kind of series on Netflix or something. But instead, you put on your running shoes and you take like a 5 kilometers run. And you come back and you feel like, oh, my body feels better, my mind feels better, I'm more happy. You use your body, you go for a run, and the stress you felt when you came home from work has somehow become smaller. In the classroom, if you have kids like Yaakov and Liska, or you have normal kids, most of the time you can forget about the top-down regulation. Because top-down regulation really needs like the smartest part of our brain. It needs access to the neocortex, which is the outermost part of our brain. And that part of the brain is not completely developed until we are between the age of 25 and 30. So kids in your classroom, sorry. The kids in the classroom is not going to access that part of their brain all the time. So you need to think about relational regulation, connecting with the kids, and the use of their bodies to calm them down. So to look into the more practical way of dealing with kids like Yaakov and Liska and other restless kids in the classroom, what can we do? The first thing is that you need to be aware of something called sensory overload. Now, our body has a lot of senses. Of course, we have the obvious one, like sight and hearing and touch and smell and taste. But there are other senses as well. And nobody completely agrees on how many senses. So somebody will say 7, someone will say 9, someone will say 8. But the main thing for you to know is that all our senses will pick up signals from the world outside and what's going on inside our body, and it's going to send signals to the brain. And young children with immature brains, they're not very good at distinguishing what kind of sensory signals should I pay attention to and what can I not care about. And brains who have been sensitized, that has a sensitized stress response system, is often worse at sort of making this distinction between what do we really need to care about and what can we just ignore. So for instance, when we are sitting here right now, you know, if you really use your ears, you're going to hear that there are some noises outside of the windows. There might be some noises from the traffic. The lights are not on, but if the lights were on, you could see that maybe one of them were like flickery lights. Most of you will just shut out all the noises from the outside, most of them. It's just blend in like background noise, you don't care about them. You'll ignore the flickering lights. But for some kids in your class, that's completely impossible. So sensory overload is kind of like, it's like, sorry, I can't hear you over the sound of my shirt tag being itchy, and these 2 strands of hair touching my face, and the TV, and one of my shoelaces being undone, and air touching me, and the plane flying overhead, and my own thoughts about remembering to buy hummus. So you'll have kids in your classroom that will have trouble paying attention to what you're teaching them because they have an itchy shirt tag. And they're going to be like, I don't like this shirt. Or they're feeling uncomfortable in their seats. It's too hard to sit on this chair, it's not comfortable. Or there's something tickling on their cheeks, for instance. Or they hear a lot of sounds and they're not able to just put it in it's background noise, who cares? They're going to be, was that a car? Is that 2 cars? I wonder what kind of car it is. Could it be a red car, a blue car? That's how their train of thoughts are going for every sensory signal that they get. And you can help them. One way you can help kids with sensory overload issues, and sensory overload is quite common with some diagnoses, like autism, for instance, kids with ADHD, kids with Tourette's. That's just some diagnoses when kids very often will have sensory overload. You can have it even without having those kind of diagnoses. If these kids struggle to shut out visual input, things that go on in their visual field, you can let them wear a baseball cap inside. Because when you have a baseball cap on, that cap is actually going to narrow in your visual field. And it's going to be more easy for them to pay attention to the work they're going to do, writing in their books, for instance, than if they have like a complete open visual field. You can let them, if they have like a sweater with a hood on, they can have their hood on their head. That will also narrow down their visual field. At the institution where I work, we have kids in the classroom who are allowed to wear øreklokker. Headphones, thank you. You can have headphones with noise cancellation that they put over their ears. And maybe on one ear it's not covering the ear completely, but it's moved a little bit back. Then they can hear what the teacher is saying from the front, but it will block out the sound of the person behind them shifting in their chair, or the pencil making like a noise on their paper, stuff like that. You can let them listen to music when they're going to work quietly on their desk. Have headphones with music on, and that's going to block out other kinds of sounds. You can go the easy way and get parents to cut off all the tags of the clothes, if that's uncomfortable. So try to be kind of like detectives together with the child. You're restless. Is there something about the sensory system? Is there too many noises? Can we block them out for you in any way? Is there too much going on in your visual field? Should we narrow it down a little bit? Should you have something in your mouth that will constantly give you one kind of taste in the mouth, so you don't have to figure out, is the air tasting a little bit different now than it did 5 minutes ago? And one thing you need to think about, whether we have Yaakov and Liska in the classroom or any other kid, is the classroom architecture. How is your classroom set up? Where do you put the most restless kids? When I grew up, we had this one kid in my class. He was, when I think about him now, as a psychologist with all this knowledge, I'll think that he probably had a sensitized stress response system. I know that he grew up with violence in his home. He was completely off the roof. He was just being angry most of the time. He had such a hard time starting to do his work. The teachers just thought of him as a bad boy. You know, you just need to sit still, why can't you do it? And he was put closest to the teacher's desk. And which, in one way, is a good thing, because then the teacher could connect with him, help him when he needed help to start his assignments, for instance. But the bad part about that was that he, like Yaakov, he would constantly turn around to figure out what's going on behind him. He was vigilant to his surroundings. Was there anybody behind him saying something? Was there anybody behind him doing something to threaten him, for instance? So he needed to constantly check. Guys like that, I would not put on the front of the classroom, but I would put them in the back, so nobody can sneak up on them from behind, and they can see everything that's going on in front of them. That might even feel safer. For instance, in this auditorium, I would think that if I put Yaakov on the front row here, he would constantly look behind, what's going on behind me? And he's going to be concerned about the door in the back, because somebody, some scary, crazy guy, he could come running in through that door, and Yaakov wouldn't have any clue what was happening. So he would constantly turn around. So think about, how is your classroom set up? Where can you put a kid so he will feel safe? How can you have an overview of what's going on, but not feel trapped in the corner? Always give kids an escape route. And also, one way to sort of de-escalate and reduce challenging behavior in the classroom is to think about predictability. That what you say is going to happen actually happens. Now, predictability is highly subjective. So, if I were to say to you that, could you please be so nice and attend a meeting for me at my work next week? You'll pay for the ticket to Norway and everything. You just have to go to the meeting and you have to say something wise about how one should meet kids with troubled behavior. It's a leadership meeting, so you'll meet the other leaders at my institution. For me, who goes to leadership meetings every single week and who's done that for so many years, I know exactly what's going to happen in that meeting. You do not know what's going to happen. You don't know who's going to be there, how many other people's going to be there, what are we going to talk about beside what I said we were talking about. So I wouldn't give you enough predictability for you to feel that you had complete control of what kind of meeting this is. So when we make like schedules and structure for the kids at school, and we think that we give them predictability because we tell them what's going to happen, we really need to think about, are we giving the kids the predictability they need based on their stage of development, how they function, what they know about the world, or do we give them predictability based on what we would feel as predictable? We had this discussion at work a couple of years ago at Østbytunet. It's a treatment facility. So the kids come for treatment and they go to our school during the day, and they have units that they're in during the afternoon and evening, and some nights a week they might even sleep there. And in the afternoon, in the units, we have samlingsstund. It's kind of like circle time.
Yeah, it's like gathering.
Yeah, it's like a gathering, a circle time with the kids, where the kids who are staying that evening are saying like, this evening I'm going to go to the swimming pool, and then I'm going to have a ride on my bicycle, and I'm going to play computer games for 4 or 5 minutes. And all the kids says what they're going to do, and they put them on the list. And when the kids have been at our facility for some time, they are allowed to be the leader of this gathering, this kind of circle time. And we had discussion because one of the kids, he was really bad at leading it. And the frontline staff was talking about, why is he doing that? He's been at our facility for like a year. He's been to so many circle times, so he knows what's going to happen. So why is he so bad at leading? And then we sort of had this light bulb moment, our aha moment, where we figured out that, yes, he had been to these kind of gatherings or circle times many times, but nobody had actually sat down with him and told him, when you're the leader of this gathering, this is what you're supposed to do. The adults simply thought that you've been there so many times, you've observed other kids leading it, so you probably know what to do. And when we started to give more predictability, really explain, these are the expectations that we have for you as a leader. This is how we adults are going to help you with the other kids who might be disruptive. Then it was so much easier for him, and he was going in there and leading these gatherings perfectly. So giving predictability is showing these kids really what's going to happen, what kind of expectations do you have, and how are you going to help them to meet those expectations. Predictability for kids is having a structure, a timetable. For some kids, most kids maybe, it's enough to know that, okay, today is Thursday, so I start with one lesson with math, and then we have recess, and then we're going to have English, and then we'll have lunch, and then we'll have gym, for instance. That's enough predictability, just knowing that. Other kids are going to need a timetable on their desk saying first math, then recess, then English, then lunch, then gym. For some kids, that's not enough. So when it says math, you need to tell them that we're going to work in our workbook, for instance. You need to sort of narrow down and give them more sort of the details of it for it to be predictable. So predictability is structure, it's clear expectation, and giving the kids the information of what you expect of them, but always pair it with how you're going to help them meet those expectations. You could have classroom rules. For instance, I have 2 kids, and for my youngest, who's nearly 9, she's in 4th grade, the teachers have now sent an email to all us parents saying that we have now had to make classroom rules. But we want to make it simple for the kids, so we have just 5 rules. I don't remember all of them, but one was like, I'll show respect to the other kids in my class. I'll sit still at my desk, not move around. And I'll listen to what the adults tell me to do. And a couple of more. But how predictable for an 8 or 9-year-old is it going to be if the classroom rule is, I'm going to respect the others in the class? What does that mean? What should that 8 or 9-year-old kid do in their behavior, in how they are talking and being in the classroom, that actually conveys respect for the others? For us adults, it's quite easy to think that, okay, at my workplace, if we had a rule saying that I should be respectful to my co-workers, I would know that that would mean that I would not supposed to hit, scream, or yell at Kristin in any way when we are at work. I should be nice to her. But the details in it is not that easy for our kids to grasp. So we need to narrow it down. To make it more predictable for the kids, the rules could be more like, I should talk nicely to my fellow students. And if I feel frustrated with my fellow students, my teacher will help me in dealing with that. So when it comes to predictability, it's really important to remember it's highly subjective what's going to be predictable. And I would think that most of the time, what's predictable for us adults is what we convey to the kids without thinking that they're going to need a more detailed level of predictability for it to be predictable. Now, a lot of challenging behavior is going to be escalating in the classroom because we help the kids escalate instead of de-escalate. So how we communicate with kids can either be escalating or de-escalating. For instance, when I'm standing here now, if I had a message for I'm really sorry, I don't remember your name, but the translator. If I had a message for you, you're at the far back of the room. If I stood here and I just started yelling like, could you please do this or that? That is not communicating in a nice, welcoming, friendly way. Communicating over a distance will very often be perceived as being yelled at. And nobody likes to be yelled at, whether we are adults or kids. So if I'm going to communicate, I have a message that I want to give to the translator. The best way for me to convey that message would be to actually walk up to her. So if you want the attention of somebody sitting in the back of the classroom or just like far away from you, you need to get closer instead of yelling at them. Like I said, when it came to state-dependent functioning, it's like the more aroused or activated or stressed we are, the more stupid we become. That also means that it's harder for us to grasp the meaning of what's said, especially if we use like big grown-up words. If you're really stressed out, if you are, imagine that you are the second car at a car crash site. So there are 2 cars who have crashed into each other and there are people there who are hurt and they are screaming, and maybe there's some spray smoke coming from one of the cars as well. And there's one car who's already stopped and who's trying to figure out what to do and help. And you walk up to the person from the other car and say, okay, how can I be of help? What should I do? And if he starts to use like really long sentences, well, you know, these two cars, they came and they had like really high speed and then they crashed into each other. And I think there's one person who's hurt in this car and maybe one in the other. And I think they have a rupture of the collarbone, and using a lot of words, it's going to be difficult for you to figure out what to do. But if he tells you, pick up your phone and call the ambulance. Short, sweet, direct sentence with a clear message. The more stressed you are, the better it is for you to have like a really short, easy sentence. Don't use your big grown-up words when you talk with kids who are really escalated, because it's going to be too hard for them to understand what you mean. Simple, short sentences with the easy words. That's going to help them. But the words are like 10% or something of what we actually communicate. When we communicate, the tone of our voice, our body language, and what we convey of feelings in our faces, that's way more important than actually what we are saying. So if I had a kid in my classroom who's being disruptive, challenging behavior, I was thinking like probably aroused, maybe he's fearful. I was thinking that, okay, I have to make my voice sound nice. And one way to have sort of a comforting voice is not to have the kind of voice I have now, is that you use kind of like a singing tone of voice. Not that you start singing to a kid, because then they're just going to hit you, because that's not what they want. But kind of high-pitched, the way you speak to a small infant. So if you're going to comfort a little baby, you're going to talk in a sweet, low, little bit high-pitched voice, like, oh, my babe, it's going to be all right, I'm going to be with you. That's going to calm that kid down. That's how sort of the tone of voice that you would choose when you speak with someone who's aroused, who's like all full of emotions. The problem is that we are not machines. We are not robots. We have feelings as well. And if I were in the classroom with Yaakov and he was like really upset with my teaching and he was starting to threaten me, I might feel that, you know, you're 12 years old, you're quite big in your body. I feel a little bit scared of what's happening right now. So I feel stressed and I'm not sure what to do. That's going to show in my voice. Because when I'm stressed, you actually get tension in the muscles that you have on your throat and your neck, and you're going to sound stressed. And the kid is going to know. And if the adult is stressed out, that's not a good thing. When my kids were younger, I am deadly scared of spiders. I think that all spiders probably have ganged up together and had this great master plan to kill me. So I want to get away from spiders really fast. And I live in an old house. We have like a basement. And in our basement we have what's called Norwegian basement spiders. And they're quite big, they're like this big. And we sort of have a truce, the spiders in the basement and I. So we have this agreement that if they are just standing on the walls completely still and not moving, they will be allowed to live, and I can go into the basement and fetch whatever I'm going to fetch. But if they walk up to our living room or the kitchen, they're going to die. And I'm completely prepared that whenever I walk into the basement to fetch something, I'm going to meet the spider. But as long as they're still on the wall or something, it's going to be fine. So it was this Monday morning. My youngest, she was 3 years old. My oldest was 6. And it was a Monday morning, so during the weekend we had in our hallway sort of a kind of like a tote bag where we had like my youngest's like rain clothes and stuff for kindergarten. And it had been nice weather that weekend, so we hadn't used it at all. And on Monday morning we were going to take that bag and take it back to the kindergarten when I was delivering her in the morning. So my 3-year-old and my 6-year-old, who was walking with us before I was going to take him to school after we had dropped off the youngest at kindergarten. We took the bag, we walked to the kindergarten. In the kindergarten was like a outer hallway and an inner hallway. And in the outer hallway you would sort of put all the rain clothes and the outer clothes for the kids. And my youngest, she would go into the inner hallway to put away her backpack and find her lunch pack and everything. And I put down on the floor of the kindergarten this bag with her rain gear and everything. Started to hang it up. And all of a sudden this huge, massive spider came running for me. Now in the kindergarten, they had these like low benches where the kids used to sit when they had circle time. And I freaked out. So I jumped with a split second, standing on one of the bench, screaming because of this huge, massive spider who's going to come and get me. My 3-year-old looked at me, saw her mother, really fearful, on the top of a bench. What did she do? She started crying, screaming, scared to death, thought that something's going to happen, something bad. All I can do is do the same as my mother is doing, so I'll climb up on the bench. So she climbed up. My 6-year-old, he fortunately had a little bit more access to his cortex than his poor mother had. So he looked around and he saw that my gaze was down on the floor, so he just followed my gaze. And he saw that on the floor, in his eyes, was a small, cute little spider. And then he just looked at me and he said, "Don't worry, I'll go get an adult." Because at that moment in time, he sure as did not see me as an adult. So he got one of the adults from the kindergarten and he came as a knight in shining armor and killed this massive spider. But I think that's one, it's not something I'm proud of that I scream and shout in the kindergarten, not being the adult. This is a great way to show how we become infectious when it comes to emotions. So my 3-year-old, she had so sort of little understanding of the world because she's just 3. So when she saw me being really scared, that was her only option, was to think that the world is a scary place. Luckily, I had brought with me my 6-year-old who thought that, well, normally the kindergarten is not a scary place, so if my mother is scared of something here, it has to do with what she's looking at. And what is my mother looking at? Oh, it's a spider. That can be taken care of. So if you're in a classroom and you feel stressed out, if your brain is going like, this kid is like a massive spider, that's going to show. If you become apprehensive, stressed, with a kid being disruptive in class, that's going to show. But we are not robots. We have feelings. We get stressed. But then you have to take like a deep, big breath. Like, okay, I have to look more relaxed. And if you're stressed, you might sort of get big in your body. So you'll be standing like this. I really think, Yaakov, that you should calm down now. And if you make your body bigger, for a kid who's stressed out, so his visual field is actually more zoned in, he's going to feel that you are a bigger threat than you are. So if you're going to help kids or adults for that matter, who's really freaked out, we need to have a relaxed body language. We need to practice taking deep breaths and relaxing our body. And fake it till you make it. Do it over and over and over. We do breathing exercises with the adults at our facility, just so they would know how to take a deep, relaxing breath when they're feeling stressed out. Because when you're stressed, you don't have access to your smart part of the brain. So you need to have some sort of exercises that you just know what to do. If you can be like my rag doll, if I can use you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Here?
You can stand over there, or maybe you should go in front. That's better. Poor Kristin, she just doesn't know what's happening now. I'm giving her no predictability.
That's my life.
Yeah. If Kristin is being disruptive, she's being restless, I'm not going to calm her down if I walk up to her like this. So, Kristin, what's happening? And even worse, if she is like Yaakov, Liska, or any other kid in the classroom, she's sitting on a chair. You just sit down. If she's sitting like this, and now pretend there's a desk in front of her, like she has a desk. If I walk up to her, we have to move a little bit. Like this. Just smile and wave to the crowd. If she's sitting like this, and as a teacher, I want to calm her down. I want her to feel safe. I want to get her attention. So I go and stand in front of her desk like this. Hi, Kristin, I want to help you to calm down. This is not going to help her. Right now, I'm taking up like 90% of her visual field. I'm getting really close to her sort of intimate, personal zone. So she's not going to feel calm. And if I were like a normal adult with a normal size and not short like I am, she would feel like me hovering over her. And do we like people hovering over us? No, we don't. And I could even do something that's worse than this, because one thing is to come from the front, because now she can watch me come. But I could be at the other end of the classroom. And then I see that Kristin is getting restless. And I thought, I need to do something about this. So I go like this. Hi, Kristin, you need to calm down. And walking up from the behind, that is so uncomfortable. If you imagine yourselves on like, it's rush hour, and you're on this really crowded bus. And you have the other passengers, if you just stand up. So now, Kristin and I, we are on a really crowded bus. And we can't have like our personal space anymore. If I stand, I'm sorry, I don't have corona, you know that. If I stand like this, it's going to be very uncomfortable for the both of us. And if you saw, I couldn't even face her. I had to take my head away. And if I have to stand in front of you because you're taller, and if she was standing straight behind me, like breathing down my neck, that would be really uncomfortable. But if we were on a crowded bus and we stood like this and we didn't know each other, that would feel much more comfortable. So standing with your side towards the side of the child will actually de-escalate. And also if you are touching someone from the side, you actually have less sensory receptors on the side of your body than you would have on like your complete back. So you get less sensory overload signals to the brain saying that somebody's touching me. So a disruptive, challenging child, I would always approach from the side, and with my side as well, because then I become smaller. I take up so little part of her visual field, and it's going to feel safer. Thank you. So So with, so I need to rush a little bit, just a few more minutes. When you have kids in your classroom who are activated, aroused, they may be in a state of fear, think about how you can make your size smaller. You are the bigger part because you're the adult. You need to stay safe. The other kids in the classroom have to stay safe. For instance, if Yaakov is like flipping over his desk or being threatening, but make your body small. Go down on your knees. Sit like this. I've been with kids who I thought might end up punch me or kick me in the face, but where I've actually chosen to go really low. And I would put up one arm like this, because then I could block if they were going to kick me. But I make, even I who are not tall at all, have to make myself really small.
Okay.
Yeah?
I think it would be nice to show the session again with the chair, and if you approach me, because I...
Yeah. We can do one more. Christian had this idea. I think you should, yeah. Just to, you know, baby steps. How to do this. This is Yaakov, who's being disruptive, who feels that the assignments are just rubbish and I'm a stupid person, I'm like a stupid cow, and I want him to calm down. We all agreed, I hope, that I would not come full frontal on him. I would not come from the back, but I will approach him from the side. Hopefully there are not too many kids like around here, but maybe I have to go like around another kid, approaching him. With him, I would go low. I would go down here. Now, if I'm here, he can hit me in the face. And I trust that he will probably do that. And if I have the space, if there are no other kids here, I could be here. She can hit and scream and do whatever she wants, but she can't actually finding me. I'm safe. This is a safe distance for me.
I can tickle you.
Yeah, we can tickle. That's not dangerous. If I'm here, this is the most dangerous place you can be for your own safety. Because here, she can really hit me with a full blow. And I don't like that. Now, if I'm here, she can hit, but it's not going to hurt me. It's going to be a little bit painful, because she's been working out, so she's a bit strong, but it's not going to be dangerous. She's not going to like hit me so I get internal bleedings or anything like that. It's going to be uncomfortable, but I can live with it. But when I stand like this, even I are big, and we don't want to be that. So I would go down here, and I would have one arm up to protect me. But if I have one arm here, Yaakov or Christian or whoever is going to wonder, what am I going to do with this hand? I could use this hand to hit or hurt. So then it's better to put both your hands on the kid's arm. And whenever you touch a kid, or an adult for that matter, always remember that deep touch, like not pressing, but sort of deep touch like this, that is something that calms our brain. So if you think back to the golden age when we were living in cages, in small knit communities, we would be lying next to each other like this, sleeping at night, keeping the warmth. So that's a good signal for a brain. But a light touch, like a tickle, that's the scary spider who is coming to get you. So you don't want to touch anyone lightly. That's gonna alert them even more. So you want to have like a deep touch on their side. But I would never ever like grab like this. Because if you grab someone like this, it's not comfortable. It's not gonna calm them down. Did I forget anything now?
No.
No?
That's perfect.
We have 2 minutes. Should we do 2 minutes of Q&A, or is there anything? I could go on and on about this, so I think we need to sort of wrap it up. I just want to take this because this is also very, 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 very important. We adults tend to think that if a kid is gonna hear what we are saying and take home the message, they need to sit still. In Norway, we actually have a phrase for it. It's called listening position. That's when you're sitting completely still, with your hands in your lap, looking at the person talking. Now, I don't know about you guys and how things are in the Czech Republic, but in Norway, we tend to hear with our ears and not our eyes. So you don't have to look at someone to hear what they're saying. And if you force someone to look at you, like really force them into having eye contact, that is going to be threatening, especially if you are a little bit upset yourself. So like, look at me when I talk to you. You're going to have like black eyes, dilated pupils. That is not going to comfort the kid. That's going to make Yaakov hit you in the face. Let the kids look at the side of you, on the top of your head, or out the window. Because they don't listen with their eyes, they listen with their ears. And they're going to take home so much more of your teaching if they are allowed to sit and draw a little bit, or move a little bit about, have some fidgety toys in their hands, have some water to drink. That's actually going to make them concentrate better than if you make them sit completely still, their hands in their lap, looking at you. Because then they're going to use all their energy on just keeping their bodies still. And that's not the main goal of the class. It's not to learn to sit completely still. It's to learn math and English and all the other subjects. So I think that was kind of like the most important I had to say before we sort of wrap it up. Now we have like 22 seconds. Does anybody have any questions or remarks or anything? Yeah?
Můžu česky? Ano. Mě by zajímalo, moje kolegyně měla takového kluka, který byl hodně výbušný. A vlastně si to neuvědomoval. Hrozně rychle se dostal do hodně vážné situace, byl agresivní vůči spolužákům.
My colleague had a student, and the student was quite, even though he was a boy, he was quite manly. And he didn't really realize he was quite manly, and he could get aggressive quite quickly.
A ona to byla na tělocviku a ona s ním vyvinula takový systém, že mu ukazovala vlastně zelenou, oranžovou, červenou a
vlastně... And it was in a gym class and she decided to like show green, orange and red.
A vlastně tím signalizovala, protože ona viděla dřív, než on si to sám uvědomoval, že začíná být v nepohodě.
To signalize that something's going out of hand, you know, because he wasn't able to realize that something was going out of hand.
A jim to fungovalo, že ona když ukázala oranžovou, on si uvědomil, že už je v
She showed orange, so he realized that things were going downhill.
A vlastně to ještě mohlo jako nějak ovládat.
But could still correct it.
Myslíte si, že u těchto dětí může fungovat to, že nějak člověk vlastně naznačí, že už začínají...
Do you think it works with these children? That you actually indicate that they are becoming agitated, but they don't realize themselves, but you use some kind of an orange light, you know, to indicate that.
Po nějaké dohodě samozřejmě.
You have to agree, of course, on what these signs are going to be.
It's one thing to sort of agree on, like an orange light means that you are getting agitated, things are getting into hand. But the most important thing is, what is the kid going to do with that kind of information?
Ta oranžová ano, může po dohodě indikovat, že se to vymyká z ruky, ale otázka důležitější je, co to dítě s tou informací bude dělat, jak s ní naloží.
Have you made a plan together that whenever you feel like this, your choice of action is to leave the classroom, to go to, if you have like a quiet zone in the classroom, or you know, go out and run around the soccer field before you come in again. You know, you need to have a plan that you have made with the kid what are you supposed to do with the
Musíte mít
information?
nějaký plán, co s tím dítětem, který s tím dítětem uděláte, co bude dělat v té chvíli, kdy ukážete tu červenou. Jo? Buď odejde ze třídy, nebo si ve třídě sedne do nějakého rohu, kde mají třeba gauč, aby se sklidnilo, nebo odejde, prostě vyběhne na ovál, vrátí se do třídy. Prostě, ale to musí být něco, na čem už jste dopředu dohodnuti, jaká bude teda reakce na tu oranžovou barvu.
So to put it very simply, I have a Skoda. It's a great car, and every once in a while, on the front panel of the car, it's going to light up this orange sign with a fuel pump.
Já mám Škodovku a jednou za čas se mi tam na palubce objeví olejka oranžová.
And the car and I, we have an agreement that when this orange light comes on, I don't do anything with the lights, but I go to a gas station and I open like a hatch in the back and I pour diesel into it.
Aha, takže ne olejka, ale objeví se mi, jasně, rozsvítí se mi, že mám málo nafty. A když se mi rozsvítí, že mám málo nafty, tak prostě mám s tím svým autem dohodu, že se nesnažím to oranžové světýlko nějak zrušit, ale jedu k čerpačce a natankuju tam naftu.
And when I do that, the orange light goes away.
A když tam natankuju naftu, tak co se stane? Oranžová kontrolka zmizí.
And you have to do the same with the kids. You have to make a plan that gives them enough information that they can use in the state that they are in. And remember that the more activated they are, the simpler the instructions have to be.
Takže s tím dítětem vlastně to musíte udělat stejně. Máte s ním nějakou dohodu, co bude v té situaci, ve které je, v tom stavu, které je dělat. A musíte to udělat tak, aby to bylo schopno dělat, protože si musíte uvědomit, že čím víc aktivované to dítě je, tím menší možnost má něco komplikovaného dělat.
The more active the kids are, the more responsibility you have to take in order to lead the kid into doing some beneficial kind of activity.
Protože čím je více to dítě aktivováno vlastně v tom svém stresu, tak tím víc odpovědnosti je na vás, abyste ho nějakým způsobem vedla k tomu a v tom, že udělá něco k tomu, aby se sklidnilo.
Yes?
Můžu se zeptat? Děkuji. Mě by zajímalo, že dítě smyslově přesycené a já se bez předchozí domluvy se snažím nějak dotknout, nevyprovokuju větší aktivitu.
If there are too many sensory inputs for the child, you know that the child is overwhelmed with sensory information, and I come to the child, touch the child without warning him or her in advance, am I not actually agitating the child further?
You might.
Může se stát, že jo.
It could help, it could not help.
Může to pomoci a taky to nemusí pomoci.
But you could be, with kids who are activated, it's always a good thing to be like a sports commentary. So if you're like watching a football game, it's going to be one guy talking like, oh, and Ronaldo, he runs for the ball and he tries to kick it, and no, he misses for the goal. And, you know, they're talking constantly about what's happening. And you could do the same. I'm approaching you.
Jako sportovní komentátor, jako oni prostě koukají komentují ten fotbal a ty říkají, Ronaldo běží za míčem, minul míč, jo, a ty tak vy se můžete chovat stejně.
So you could actually sort of put a name on what you're doing. I'm coming to help you.
Můžete říct, já k tobě půjdu, abych ti pomohla.
I'm going to touch your arm.
A dotknu se tvojí ruky.
Or I'll walk away to give you more personal space.
A nebo naopak vzdálím se, abych ti dala více soukromého prostoru, nebo osobního prostoru.
For instance, if I was approaching Yaakov and he would start spit at me.
Já kdybych se přibližovala k Jakubovi, on za mě začne plivat.
I wouldn't say to Yaakov, I'm going to go away because you're spitting, because spitting is just a symptom.
Protože ty na mě pliveš.
Spitting is just a symptom for me to cross his intimate zone.
A splivání v podstatě znamená, že se mu nelíbí, že se přibližuju moc blízko.
So I'll just say, I'm too close, I'm going to get out of your personal space.
Takže mu řeknu, vidím, že jsem moc blízko, já se stahnu z svého osobního prostoru.
But I still want to help you.
Ale pořád ti ještě chci pomoct samozřejmě. To platí.
Takže je možný, vlastně, nebo pro mě jsou to dvě možnosti. Buď to se domluvím s tím dítětem předem, protože už ho znám a vím, že bude mít nějaké problémové chování.
For me there are two possibilities in here. Either I agree with the child up front because I know the child's problems and I know that this disturbing behavior may appear.
A nebo
and we know what I'm doing, or I'm not in agreement with the child, we haven't agreed on any steps to be taken because I don't know the child, and then I become the commentator. Would you say that? So either you agree in advance that you always can come and touch, or you can be a commentator.
I think you can sort of do both, and you can also do something completely else. If you know the kid, it's a good thing to make plans with the kid, what to do if they experience anything in the classroom that sort of gets them stressful in a way.
Když znáte to dítě, tak se s ním opravdu můžete dohodnout dopředu, co budete dělat ve chvíli, kdy ho v té třídě něco takovým způsobem vyhodí ze sedla, že prostě na to začne nějak reagovat.
But whether I come into class like if I'm going to be a substitute teacher, so I don't know the class at all, or if I come into a class that I do know, I would. I think that if for instance, I didn't know the kids at all, if I was a substitute teacher, I would come into the classroom and I would think that, okay, in this classroom, statistically, there are going to be kids in here who struggle to pay attention. Some are going to be restless, like Yaakov. Some are going to be daydreaming, like Liska. And I need to help both of these types of kids.
Kdybych třeba byla ve třídě, kde jenom supluji, takže tu třídu neznám, tak tam přijdu a říkám si tak, statisticky vím, že v této třídě jsou nějaké děti, které tady budou vyrušovat. Buď to budou děti, které budou vyrušovat stylem Jakub, to znamená, tam budou dělat nějaký bugr, anebo naopak se stáhnou do sebe jako Eliška. A já musím pomoci, nebo být schopná pomoci oběma těm dětem.
And what I do know is that getting kids into their thinking part of the brain, that's going to be hard. If I don't have a relationship with the kids, if I don't know them, it's going to be hard to use relational regulation, even if I'm a nice person. But I have one place I can always go, and that is sensory motor regulation.
Takže já si vlastně v té chvíli řeknu, dobře, tak já ty děti neznám, protože jsem tady jenom na suplu, takže nemůžu použít vztahovou regulaci. Takže vlastně jediné, co můžu udělat, nemůžu také použít regulaci ze zhora dolů, protože vím, že ty děti prostě přístup k tomu racionálnímu myšlení tady v té chvíli nemají, takže můžu jít do senzoricko-motorické regulace. To mi vždycky se nabízí.
So I would make a plan for the class that I was teaching to push in sensory motor regulation activities that's going to match the kids' developmental age, because what you do with 5-year-olds are going to be different to what you would do with 15-year-olds. For instance, in Norway, we have these kind of songs, like, I don't know if you have it here, but it's like you have a song where you touch your head, you touch your shoulders, you touch your knees and toes. You do kind of, there's a song about moving your body.
A připravím si prostě pro tu třídu vlastně dopředu nějaké senzoricko-motorické hrátky, které budou odpovídat věku těch dětí. Takže když jim bude 5, bude to vypadat jinak, než když jim je 15. My děláme takový to head, něco, shoulders, toes, taková ta zpívánka v angličtině, tak to třeba tak to s nimi můžete dělat.
If I came into a classroom with 15-year-olds and told them to do that, they would just laugh in my face.
U nějakých 15 letých, když s nimi budete dělat, tak se budou smát.
So I have to match my activity to their age, and I have to look out for any signs that someone are being restless or fidgety or sort of daydreaming or getting some kind of activation. But the more you can do before you get an activation, the better you are.
Takže já vlastně to musím vybrat podle věku, to, co s nimi budu dělat. A důležité je, abych takovéto cvičení udělala ještě dřív, než se mi tam někdo zaktivuje. Protože já samozřejmě sleduju, jestli prostě tam někdo se začíná vrtět, někdo začíná zlobit, někdo začíná blbnout, ale ve chvíli, když už se to začne takhle sypat, tak už je docela pozdě. Takže já vlastně bych měla začít ještě předtím, než se mi to začne sypat. Musím je pořád pozorovat.
And I know that the brain doesn't like novelty. The brain doesn't like new things. We have conservative brain. It likes what it's used to.
My všichni máme konzervativní mozky, chceme dělat to, na co jsme zvyklí. Mozek nechce žádné velké novinky.
So me just being in the classroom and they don't know me, that's enough novelty. And if I'm going to introduce like 50 new things to do in the class, like activities, it's going to be hard for the kids, whether they're 5 or 15.
Už sám ten fakt, že já jsem tam jako učitel na suplu a oni mě neznají, je pro ně dostatečná novinka, takže já potom nemůžu vytáhnout z klobouku prostě 15 nějakých cvičení, která oni neznají, protože to by pro ně už opravdu bylo příliš.
So I would come into the classroom, and if it's a bunch of 15-year-olds, I would put on the blackboard that I would say something as well, say that, you know, I don't know you, but I like to move my body at regular intervals. So at today's math lesson, we are first going to do a physical exercise, then we're going to problem solve on page 54 in our book, and after 20 minutes, we're going to do a physical exercise, and after that, we are going to have, we're going to start doing our homework, for instance.
Takže já, kdybych přišla do třídy, kde učím jako supl matematiku, je jim 15, tak se postavím před tabuli a řeknu jim, nevím jak vy, ale já se ráda protáhnu v hodině, takže začneme cvičením, protáhneme se, pak budeme 20 minut si dělat cvičení na straně 54, pak se znovu protáhneme a pak můžete klidně začít dělat na svých domácích úkolech.
And I would do the same physical exercise, the same break activity. I would do the same whenever I'm going to do it. I wouldn't introduce one at the start of the lesson and after 20 minutes introducing a new activity. So for instance, with 15-year-olds, I would say that, okay, we're going to start with doing 10 push-ups on our chairs. We're going to sit on our chair and we're going to lift our body just using our arms. We're going to do that 10 times.
Já určitě, pokud takové to fyzické cvičení tam zařadím do toho na začátku té hodiny a potom po těch 20 minutách, tak to bude stejné. Na tom začátku i po těch 20 minutách to bude stejné cvičení. To znamená, že bych začala u těch 15 letých tím, že si uděláme 10 kliků na židli, to znamená vlastně se zdviháme na židli za pomoci rukou.
And the 15-year-olds are going to think of you as the crazy lady, but they're going to think of you as the nice crazy lady.
A žáci si budou myslet, že jsem učitelka Magorka, ale na druhou stranu si budou myslet, že jsem hodná učitelka Magorka.
So they're going to laugh a little bit, and you need to, you know, let them laugh a little bit and get them to calm down. Then you do page 54 in the book or whatever it was. And if 20 minutes passes, or you see that somebody is getting restless, fidgety, I would say, you know what, let's do 10 more push-ups on our chair.
A vy děláte tedy těch 10 kliků, oni se budou pochychtávat, jo, pak začnou pracovat na té stránce 54, vy je sledujete a po 20 minutách, nebo možná i dříve, když se tam začne někdo moc vrtět, řeknete, dobrý, tak teď jeden 10 kliků na židli.
And now you're not only the nice crazy lady, you're the funny crazy lady.
A už nejste jenom učitelka Magorka, hodná učitelka, ale ještě jako úplně ta nejsrandovnější učitelka Magorka.
And they're going to humor you and they're going to do it.
A jim se to bude líbit, jim to bude připadat sranda a udělají to.
And if you do it whenever you see somebody getting restless in the class, you're probably going to sort of hit them before they are in a state of fear or terror. You're going to get them just at the start of their activation.
A když to uděláte, pokaždé, když uvidíte, že se tam někdo nějak začíná podezřele hodně vrtět, tak vlastně to nenecháte eskalovat do situace, kdyby tam opravdu začal být nějaký velký problém v té třídě, ale vlastně to udržíte.
And it's going to be much easier to keep the calm in the class, even if you don't know the kids at all. Now, so it's 15 minutes past the time. You're so patient. But I think we need to wrap up today. It's been so great talking with you. I hope you could bear over my voice and my coughing and everything.
Takže jsem hrozně ráda, že jsem mohla přijet, že jsem vám mohla přednášet a jsem vám velmi vděčná, že jste mě pozorně naslouchali a že jste neměli problém s tou mojí hlasovou indispozicí.
So thank you.